evening, ghouls and fiends. Welcome once again to another edition of the Ministry of Horror. I'm your host, Tezz, and we are back once again here on whatever platform you are listening or viewing this on. YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, take your pick. We had a little bit of a delay last week. We, for the first time in a little while, have missed a week, which it used to be the norm a little while ago when the show was primarily every other week. But last week was due to be a live show, the Twitch show. But unfortunately, I got struck down by the thing that has been going around again recently. And it's the first time that I've had it, but it did knock me for six. I kind of found myself, like, for a day, just basically bedridden, had no energy, muscle aches were terrible, sinus headaches was really bad. And it just sort of took the wind out of my sails, and I'd get moments where I've suddenly got like, yeah, I'm feeling okay, I feel like I've got a bit of energy now, let's try and get some chores done and try and keep on top of some things. And I would do them, but then just feel zapped, feel completely drained, and then need to have a sleep. So that sucked. But I've been back in the gym a couple of times already. Yesterday and the day before, so Tuesday and Wednesday, and it felt good. You know, I'm feeling basically back to normal, so that is nice. Now my voice may seem a little bit different, and I don't think that's relating to that, but I did go to the pub to watch the Euro semi-final, England-Holland, and yeah, there was a lot of shouting. You just get wrapped up in the moment, and also it was very loud, so trying to have a conversation, you had to shout anyway. But had a great time. Had a great night with James and Tom. So the Sunday could be messy because Sunday is the Euro final. So we'll see how that goes. For today's show, we've got a few reviews. There isn't a retro review, just because I haven't. I mean, it always comes down to the usual thing of time, and I just haven't had that time. I have had time because I was like bedridden for a day, but during that time I didn't really want to watch any kind of horrors, and it didn't even cross my mind to watch a retro. I think the retro films I wanted to watch were just, you know, more like a mainstream film. We ended up watching Twister, which I'd never seen because I just, you know, big event blockbusters like disaster films were never really my thing for the longest time. It always just looked like style over substance. But it was actually a lot of fun. You know, decent film. And then we followed that up with Aliens, which I had a great time. I had a great time watching that. I'm not going to do a retro review of Aliens, but we had, you know, I love that film. That's no secret. So we have got a few reviews though today. I did manage to make it to the cinema. I guess the main thing actually that I should mention for people who follow the Discord, or, you know, I may have mentioned bits and bobs on the show in the past, but about studying accountancy, AAT, and I finally finished the level that I've been on and off for a few years. I'd had a few exams recently, and really kind of got back in the swing of things, of really, you know, I upped my study game, which was difficult because, you know, I enjoy my video gaming, I enjoy spending time with my fiance, I love watching, I love all these things. I love horror films, of course, but then there's work, pressures with work, overtime, etc. And then, you know, the added pressure of these exams and studying and trying to get all this information to retain in my head. It was pretty heavy going, so it does feel like a weight has been lifted off the shoulders, finally finishing that and getting the diploma. So, yeah, take a bit of time away from studying and then decide what to attack next. But that's done. So, pat on the back for myself there. But no, it's been a hard road, but glad to have finished it. Yep, the dogs are yapping away in the background because I think they want their dinner, but they're going to have to wait a little bit. So that's kind of been the main news for me in the last few days. But gaming wise, we did a little stream last week on the Xbox of, I can't even remember what the game was called. Something of the Deep. It Steals in the Deep, something like that. And that was pretty successful, actually. The fact that I can now just turn on my Xbox, hit a button on my HDMI splitter. Well, I have to very quickly plug in the capture card, but that was literally USB port, plug the through lead into that. Easy. So I really have no excuse now not to do some streaming, especially where I'm a console gamer more often than PC. And yeah, we got the options now. So I will try and have a bit more regularity with that, and I know that's something I always say, but I don't really have the excuse anymore because the studying's done. So we will see next week about doing a bit more gaming, maybe of that game, maybe jumping back on the PlayStation, without this setup, the camera setup, but the PlayStation in the living room to do a bit more Resident Evil 0. Not too sure. Probably not the Chant. That was kind of wank. But we got some news, not a huge amount of news on this week's show. There doesn't seem to be a listing for new films from our usual source of horror. But we've got a few little news bits to go through. And then for the reviews, as I mentioned, there's no retro review, but I have watched Tarot. I've also watched a film called Sunrise. And I did actually manage to get to the cinema, hallelujah, to watch Maxxxine. So we will talk about that. Now, I had toyed around the idea of doing a discussion, like a puff piece on the Maxxxine trilogy, or the Pearl trilogy, or the High West Maxxxine trilogy, I suppose. But I feel I probably need to rewatch X and Pearl just to refresh myself. So that might be in the next coming weeks we do a little look at those films. And to be honest, that's a featured presentation. That's more for the live show. So who knows? Maybe that's next week. Don't know. Don't want to overload things. I'm hoping for next week to get down the cinema and watch Longlegs, which is out like tomorrow or this weekend. I am very hyped for Longlegs. I won't be able to watch it this weekend. We're away. We're away this weekend. Well, we might be able to do it on Saturday. We'll see how things go. But yeah, I am so hyped up for Longlegs. Like I haven't seen any negative press about it, and everything is just saying that it just fills you with constant dread. Hook that up to my veins. I'm so excited for a bit of Longlegs. But anyway, without further ado, let's get into the horror news. This is the news.
This is God.
Boosh, there we go. I just realised the sign isn't lit up behind me. Doesn't matter. I can't be asked. It's been quite warm on and off for the last week or so, so I have a fan set up in here. The fan isn't on at the moment because that would just be really quite loud for recording purposes, but it is plugged in where the lights would be plugged in. I didn't notice, can't be asked, but you can see the lettering, so you know what show you're watching. So first up on the news from bloodydisgusting.com, which is where we always get our news. Great site, check it out. Bish bash bosh. Necrobobicon. Kevin Smith shares Evil Dead-inspired prop from next Jay and Silent Bob movie. This comes from John Squires. The lovable duo Jay and Silent Bob will return in a brand new movie that Kevin Smith and Jason Mewes are shooting later this year, and Smith has taken to Instagram this afternoon to share a prop that he whipped up for the production. It's titled The Necrobobicon, a take on the classic Necronomicon from the Evil Dead that looks to be made out of Silent Bob's face. Smith joked in his Instagram post, "Behold the Necronomikev, the Book of the Dead film careers." Kidding, kinda. It's actually called the Necrobobicon. What's particularly cool about this killer prop is that it was created by Night of the Living Nick Studios, which is run by a graduate of Tom Savini's makeup effects school. I commissioned Night of the Living Nick to unearth this ancient evil tome that features in the new Jay and Silent Bob flick Jason Mewes and I start shooting later this year, Smith explains. The Necrobobicon doesn't swallow your soul, but legend has it that misuse of the book will leave the reader forever silent. We can't tell if Smith is referring to Twilight of the Mallrats or a Jay and Silent Bob movie that hasn't been announced yet, but keep your eyes locked on his social accounts for updates. So we talked in the past about my kind of thoughts on Kevin Smith films. Like, I was quite a fan back in the day. Clerks came out. I was too young when Clerks came out to be on that train, but my first instance of Kevin Smith film was Dogma, and it was just so different to everything else I'd seen because it had that kind of like indie, hip kind of comedy sensibilities, but set around this quite drastic storyline involving angels and God and Jesus and all this stuff. But then, following on from that, I saw Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, and for a long time that was one of my favourite comedies growing up. Like, I absolutely loved it. And it's one of those things where you see that, and then you start hearing and discovering, oh, okay, Clerks was his first film, and then you've also got Mallrats, Chasing Amy. I'm probably missing an obvious one, but the main kind of hitters there. But a lot of his later films just haven't really done it for me. Like, Tusk is just really weird. It's just a really weird film, and I think it's kind of for the sake of it in places. Red State, I was quite hyped for that when it was coming out because of the setup of it seemed really interesting. This kind of like, oh, it seems like it's a teen comedy. These lads are just trying to get laid, bro chat, all that stuff. But then they end up in some sort of religious murderous cult, which is uber violent. But then it takes this turn into like a Waco standoff with the government, and I don't know, it didn't really click with me. There was another one just didn't really click with me. And then seeing the Jay and Silent Bob reboot, I think it was called, I was quietly optimistic about that because I thoroughly enjoyed Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. But that one, it was just very much a 6 out of 10. You know, it felt like, okay, it's kind of nice to see some of these characters again, but it's just not hitting in the same way that it did. And also the Kevin Smith playing Kevin Smith role, I didn't like that at all. Like, I'm not a big fan of the whole meta thing that happens sometimes. It's never really been my cup of tea, so to speak. But yeah, I wasn't really a fan of that. And there's other films that I haven't seen that I've just heard are terrible, like Yoga Hosers and stuff like that. But saying that, whilst I did thoroughly enjoy Mallrats back in the day, I didn't know that there was going to be a Twilight of the Mallrats. And one part of me is a bit trepidatious about that. Like, oh god, we're just relying on the old films and sort of dragging them back, and you know, surely nothing good's going to come of that. But I guess we kind of had those feelings a little bit starting to happen, like the early stages of that prior to Clerks 2. Because the first time I saw Clerks was the original ending when the guy gets killed or gets shot, which was the non-theatrical ending. But when I first saw that, I was actually like, this is really, really funny. Like, this is way better than I expected it to be. Subsequent films from there, you know, I've just sort of thought, has he kind of lost it in terms of that touch? But then Clerks 3, I didn't have high hopes for that. And I really enjoyed it. There's a lot of heart in that film. And that kind of just said that, yeah, okay, we are revisiting these films to make franchises out of films that maybe didn't need a franchise. But there is still a voice in there. And I think, you know, if you take out the silliness, just focus on the core characters and the dialogue and just keeping things grounded, I just feel that we're in for a better time. I don't know. It's not very non-horror sort of chat, but the only sort of thing that this propped up in the list was because it's a Book of the Dead, Evil Dead-esque book, but it's Silent Bob. It does look very cool. But yeah, Kevin Smith, I haven't given up on him yet. And I do still listen to Tell 'em Steve Dave podcast, and I've been rewatching Comic Book Men on Prime. It's a good show if you like reality TV. Anyway, next up. The Platform 2 trailer. Netflix serves up seconds in with horror sequel in October. This is from John Squires. Galda Gatsulu Eurasia's The Platform was a massive hit for Netflix back in 2020, becoming one of the most watched original movies in the streaming service's history. The director returns for The Platform 2, and Netflix has announced this morning that the sequel begins streaming October 4th, 2024. There is an official teaser trailer out now. Milena Smith and Hovik Kurian star in The Platform 2. I've probably butchered those names. Netflix previews, a mysterious figure has managed to establish a new law in The Platform, but can justice truly be enforced in hell, and who will enforce it? The first film set inside a vertical prison system where inmates are assigned to a level and forced to ration food with a platform that moves between the floors. Inmates on high levels eat better than those below, and one man tries to effect change so everyone gets enough. Raphael reviewed the this is a review, I don't need to read that. Yeah, I have seen the original Platform. It's one of those kind of one and done films for me. Like it was decent. I can't really remember too much about the ending, but it does have some good moments in it. But did it strike a chord with me? Not massively. The trailer for the Platform 2, it looks decent, but it does look very much more of the same. And I guess you have to kind of assume that if we're staying in that world and we're not exploring outside of that world, and I understand why that would be the case, because that's kind of the unique selling point here. So if you enjoyed the original Platform, you got a sequel coming. If not, you probably won't watch The Platform 2. But I think The Platform's worth a watch. It just didn't do anything for me, personally. Now, this is kind of interesting. Next up in the news from John Squires, VHS Beyond, coming to Shudder this Halloween. Meet the directors. The VHS franchise will return to Shudder with a brand new Shudder original, VHS Beyond, this coming Halloween season, and Variety has announced the roster of directors. For starters, VHS Beyond will premiere on Shudder October 4th, 2024. From Shudder and Studio 71, the upcoming 7th installment of the series will feature 6 new blood-curdling tapes, placing horror at the forefront of a sci-fi-inspired hellscape. Here's the full list of segment titles and directors for this year's VHS Beyond, which is packed with big names including Justin Long, Mike Flanagan, and Kate Siegel. Stalk, directed by Jordan Downey. Fur Babies, written and directed by Christian Long and Justin Long. Live and Let Die, directed by Justin Martinez. Dream Girl, directed by Virat Pal. Stowaway, directed by Kate Siegel, plus a special presentation by Jay Shield. Okay, so I do enjoy the VHS franchise. It does have its ups and downs. But there is just this enduring quality to it. And like any anthology, or any good anthology, I should say, because they're not all good, you've always got a good story in there. And if you're lucky, you got plenty of good stories. But I love VHS 1. I love, for the most part, VHS 2. I don't think it kicks it out the park, or hits out the park. I still haven't seen Viral, the third one. I don't know why. I don't know what I'm dragging my heels about. VHS 94, I think, was brilliant. I think VHS 94 potentially could be my favourite. 99 was decent. 85, I think, had more, I don't know if I'd say more missteps, but there was a couple of the segments that I just felt were a struggle. I just felt dragged it down a bit. I don't think 85 is terrible, but there was a couple of the stories that I just thought, I don't care. Like, just hurry up, get to the next bit. But it also has spin-offs. Siren, which is a spin-off of a segment from VHS 1. Siren is great. And the segment from VHS 1 is probably one of my favourites. I always remember seeing a clip from that segment, the Siren segment of VHS 1, on IGN prior to the film coming out, and just thinking, oh man, this looks incredible. That grabbed my attention. And Kids vs. Aliens was pretty fun, actually. I wasn't expecting there to be a spin-off of that, and that was a segment in the second film. But Kids vs. Aliens it's a good laugh, actually. It's definitely worth a watch. But yeah, anyway, October's looking pretty good this year for VHS fans, franchise fans. Next up, this is an odd one. This comes from Mike Wilson. Nintendo releases mysterious Smiling Man teaser. Nintendo's gone the creepy route with a cryptic new video that, well, doesn't explain a whole lot. Published across their regional social media accounts, the video is entitled Emio, while the Japanese version of the video is titled The Smiling Man. The 15-second video, which is now age-restricted, carries an ESRB rating of mature, featuring various shots of a man in a trench coat wearing a paper bag on his head that sports a smiley face. The Japanese kanji that appears at the end is the aforementioned smiling man. The only description for the video is, "Who is Emio visit?" Making things even more interesting is that the Japanese version of the video leads to a teaser site. Staying on the teaser site is the man changing the paper bag for a split second for an alternate smiley face. Other than that, we're stumped. Nintendo's obviously tried to shed its image as being predominantly kid-friendly in the past, so whatever this next title is, we're all for it. Yeah, I clicked on this because I thought, okay, the image looks kind of creepy, and also Nintendo. Yeah, I just normally associate Nintendo with Zelda, Mario, Smash Bros, Mario Kart, you know, those sorts of things. I never really think of horror when I think of Nintendo. Especially first-party horror, I should say. So, yeah, check out the video if you want. It is 15 seconds long, and not a lot really happens in it, but it does have this kind of creepy-looking image of a dark room with a guy in a trench coat and a smiley-faced paper bag on his head. I mean, that's it. You don't really get much more than that. Next up, got a couple of bits left. Now, this I did check the trailer out for. It's the good thing with pre-recording, or allotting time, I should say, time management. I actually watched the trailers before doing the show, so I've got a little bit to say about them. Stream trailer. Horror movie features gore effects from Terrifier director Damien Leone. This is from John Squires. While you wait for Damien Leone's Terrifier 3 this coming October from Cineverse and Bloody Disgusting, the team's next horror movie, Stream, is headed our way even sooner. Iconic Events releasing will bring Stream to theatres nationwide on August 21st, 2024, and the upcoming horror movie's bloody trailer has been debuted by Variety today. Director Michael Levy's Stream comes from Fuzz on the Lens Productions, with the film's makeup effects being handled by Terrifier and Terrifier 2 director Damien Leone. Stream is a modernised slasher made by horror fans for horror fans, and we are extremely excited and honoured to be bringing this movie to the big screen for audiences to enjoy together, Levy tells Variety. We have an incredible cast of genre greats who deliver stellar performances, and of course having Terrifier's Damien Leone and Phil Falcone heading the gore effects, we made sure we delivered the goods for our incredible fan base. But something we are most proud of is its story and arc in character development. In the film, as the Keenans try to bring their family closer together, they unwittingly enter themselves into a game of life or death. With 4 deranged killers patrolling the halls of their hotel and competing for the most creative kills, the odds are definitely stacked against them. The cast is stacked with familiar faces, including Tony Todd, Candyman, Jeffrey Combs of Reanimator, Would You Rather, Danielle Harris, Halloween 4, 5, some of the Hatchet films, Tim Reed, Stephen King's It, Dee Wallace, E.T. and The Howling, Mark Holton of Leprechaun, Felicia Rose, Sleepaway Camp, Daniel Roebuck, Final Destination, and a number of the Rob Zombie films, Dave Sheridan, Scary Movie, Devil's Rejects, Terry Alexander, Day of the Dead, Night of the Living Dead 2, David Howard Thornton, Terrifier, you know, his Art the Clown, Charles Edwin Powell, Exorcist 3, Screamers, Bob Adrian, The Conjuring 2, Sidney Malekek, Cheer Camp Killer, I don't know that one, Wesley Holloway, Terrifier 2, Damien Maffei, The Strangers, Pray at Night, and Michael Levy, Terrifier. Yeah, I mean, that is a stacked horror cast. Like, you've got some real standout names, some real veterans in there. I did check out the trailer. I'm interested to watch this. It does look a little bit more on the lower budget side, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, because especially with Terrifier director Damien Leone on board, you know you're going to get some insane gore, no doubt about that. But yeah, it does have that kind of sheen of, I don't want to say modern B-movie because that's derogatory, but it does look like it's more on the mid to low budget. It just has that kind of look. I don't know if it's the set or what, but you watch the trailer and you kind of know, like, it's not a bad thing, but it doesn't have that kind of gloss and sheen of a high budget, high brow event. Doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be. That's not a negative at all. But the setup looks pretty decent. Jeffrey Combs is really hamming it up, and he's great. He's very dominant in the trailer. Danielle Harris is obviously a legend. Yeah, I think this could be a lot of fun, actually, especially with those involved. It looks like it's a real homage to trashy horror, and I love it. And then finally on the news, Poppy Playtime coming to Xbox this Friday. Comes from Mike Wilson. After being released to the PlayStation and Switch back in 2023, Poppy Playtime will finally be making its way to Xbox. The first chapter of Mob Entertainment's hit horror title will be headed to the Xbox Series on July 12th for $4.99. Pre-orders are now open. No word yet on when the other chapters will arrive. For those who have been in the dark regarding the Poppy Playtime phenomena, it even has a film adaptation in the works and books. I didn't know that. The puzzle adventure game has you trying to survive and escape an abandoned toy factory while also avoiding the wrath of the vengeful toys lurking in the dark. Luckily, you have your grab pack, a wearable backpack that sports two hands with extendable arms. The grab pack will be key to solving puzzles while you have to pick up objects, push hard to reach buttons, manipulate electrical circuits, or currents I should say, and more. It's unfortunately not that simple, however. You have Huggy Wuggy, a towering furry blue monster with multiple rows of teeth, relentlessly pursuing you the entire time, requiring you to exercise caution wherever you go. In addition to the PlayStation Switch, Poppy Playtime is also available on PC via Steam. The latest chapter, Chapter 3, was released back in January. I've never played Poppy Playtime. I imagine I would just crap my pants. But I've seen plenty of kind of like Let's Plays on various channels. It does look a lot of fun. It looks very jumpy. But it does just look kind of like insanity. And the actual furry worry, whatever it's called, does look pretty creepy. Like, it's massive. And it does have like 2 or 3 rows of teeth. Will I be playing it? I don't know. If it's on like Game Pass, then sure, I'll give it a go. But otherwise, no, probably not. And that is it for the horror news. That was the news. Oh, oh, oh. Bosh. Right, let's jump into the review corner of the show. I shouldn't say review corner because that's a knockoff of the Triple Jump podcast, so apologies. So let's enter the review gutter. Right, we're in the review gutter. Let's start with Tarot. Tarot is a 2024 American supernatural horror film written and directed by Spencer Cohen and Anna Hellberg in their feature film directorial debuts. It's based on the 1992 novel Horoscope by Nicholas Adams. The film stars Harriet Slater, Aidan Bradley, Avantika, Wolfgang Novogratz, Humble Gonzalez, Larson Thompson, Olwen Fura, and Jacob Batalon. The story follows a group of college students who, after using a strange tarot deck, begin to gruesomely die one by one and must uncover the deck's mystery before time runs out. Okay, as per usual, we'll read a bit about the plot. We won't go too far into it. We don't go into, spoiler territory, especially heavy spoilers. But then I'll talk about, the things that I think work with the film, the things that don't, and I'll give you my score. And we'll do this for the next couple of films. 3 films, actually, to be specific. So, a group of friends, Haley, Grant, Paxton, Paige, Madeline, Lucas, and Elise, rent a mansion in the Catskills. The hell's the Catskills? Catskill Mountains. Appalachian Mountains, all right, New York, for Elise's birthday. With tension in the group following Haley and Grant's recent breakup, they distract by having Haley read their horoscopes with a box of strange tarot cards discovered in the basement. Elise gets the High Priestess and that she will climb the ladder of success. Lucas gets the Hermit. Madeline, the Hanged Man. Paige and Paxton, the Magician and the Fool, respectively, while Haley reveals that Grant is destroying their relationship himself as he received the Devil, and the two argue. Finally, Haley reads her own horoscope and gets the Death card. And then it kind of goes straight into the film. If you've seen the trailer for this, it gives you an idea of the type of horror that it is. Very much you know, it's a bunch of late teens, early 20-somethings. They've got their drama, but then when it comes to the scares, it's very heavy on the jump scares. That's not necessarily a bad thing. I enjoy a good jump scare when it's done well, but nothing is more eye-rolling in horror than just a really bad jump scare for the sake of it. Especially the false jump scares, you know, where it's just like, oh, oh no, it's my reflection that I saw. It wasn't anything evil. Oh no, there is something there. Oh no, it's, you know, just that, like, the over reliance on fake out jump scares with just stings in the music. It wears thin very quickly. That's not necessarily the issue here. I think the acting is fine. No one really stands out. I mean, the comic relief is Jacob Batalon, but he's just playing himself, really. You know, he's doing kind of just that the affable friend who's always cracking jokes and blah blah blah. The main highlight, really, I suppose, is the design of the tarot cards and then the creatures that relate to those cards. They all look pretty good. I wouldn't necessarily say that anyone particularly stands out as being really quite creepy. We don't see that much of the magician, but the magician's movements, I thought, from what you do see, were quite creepy just because... yeah, that was probably one of the better moments. There's an over-reliance on the fool, especially in the trailers, but I thought that was just quite dumb. And especially with how that leads into things later on in the film, without giving too much away, it just seemed a bit like a bit of a cop-out. High Priestess looks kind of creepy, I guess. The Hermit, you don't really see much of. The Hangman was okay. But yeah, the Devil and Death, you don't see too much of them, and maybe that's for the better. But the overarching story of why these cards, the events of these cards, seem to be impacting those who had those cards drawn for them. Yeah, okay. The backstory there is kind of decent, I guess. It was all right. It's unoffensive, or inoffensive, I should say. It's just very much one of those very middle of the road films. You know, the soundtrack is your dime a dozen, you know, high budget or decent budget teen horror. You know, it just sounds like all of those other films. There's no like kind of key motif in it that makes it kind of stand out. You know, it's not bad, it's fine. The acting is generally fine. The plot, it's not great, but the backstory that leads into why the things that's going on, okay, fine. You know, I think you're getting the picture that for me this was very much a middle of the road film. It's got a few okay moments, but you're not going to have your mind blown. I'm certainly not going to be waiting around for a Tarot 2, because no doubt if this does well, there'll be a second one. I mean, it's had a budget of 8 million, it's made 48 million. I mean, the grand scheme of things, 48 million isn't amazing, but it's a profit. It's a profit. So I could see it going down that route. Do I care for it to do that? Not really. Not really. But there's plenty of scope for them to look at previous events, because it would appear that these sort of things have happened before. But then prequels, just more often than not, I don't care about prequels, really. Unless, you know, kind of like with Pearl and X, that made sense to me because there's such a big gap and you know so little. But when it's like, you know what the outcome is going to be, what's the point in seeing how we got to the outcome, you know? It just doesn't make sense to me. 5 out of 10 for Tarot. It's fine. It's fine. Now, the next film I watched, it's a film called Sunrise. Now, this kind of came onto my radar purely because of wanting to watch a new film at home while I was unable to really kind of leave the house. Prime had absolutely nothing new on there, whether that's streaming or whether that's in the store. We ended up looking at the Sky store, and again, nothing new, nothing really jumping out. looked through the rentals, the new horror rentals. Eventually came across this. I thought, okay, Guy Pearce, he's an actor. I've heard of him. Let's check the trailer out. Okay, the trailer doesn't look dog shit. Okay, this is a good start. This has my attention a little bit. And so I rented it out. But Sunrise, written by Ronan Blaney, directed by Andrew Baird. This it's a horror. Don't know what I'd call it. A man, Fallon, played by Alex Pettyfer, roams the land as a creature of the night as he comes to terms with the tragic loss of his family at the hands of a brutal demagogue, which I had to look up what that meant. Reynolds, played by Guy Pearce. So, firstly, I saw the name Alex Pettyfer and I thought, I mean, I recognise the name. I'm sure he's been in a few things quite a while ago. Couldn't recognise him at all. Looks like a completely different person in this to whatever it was. It's like, did he do like not Alex Cross? What was the TV series? Stormbreaker, Alex Rider. I'm sure I might have seen that back in the day, bearing in mind that is going back quite a while. But did look like a completely different person in this. So I kept thinking, is that the same person? I don't know. And who else do we have in the cast? We have Guy Pearce, of course, is just a good actor. Not much more you can say on that. And outside of those people, Olwen Fura, she was in Tarot as well. And I think the reason that I know of her more is Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Sally Hardesty, the Sarah Connor Sally Hardesty, or the it's basically Sarah Connor. It's what can I say about Sunrise? It's a film. It looked decent, so I gave it a go, but Jesus Christ, this film was like pulling teeth. Honestly, it was. So we open with Guy Pearce's character, and this doesn't have a Wikipedia page, so I'm going to have to kind of go predominantly on memory. We open with Guy Pearce's character, who is having a discussion with some of his colleagues and an Asian gentleman who he feels has wronged him, and he quite violently kills the Asian gentleman. And the reason why that kind of connects to the film is he wants this land, for whatever reason, that the Asian gentleman's now widowed wife and son live in. And there seems to be a bit of a history there with regards to this man who suddenly appears, who many, many years ago had a bit of a run-in with Reynolds. But this man would appear to be some sort of vampire. It's very vague, really. I mean, there's an opening bit of text that's saying about some folklore, but it doesn't really go too much into that. I suppose the best thing to say about this is it's shot well, but narratively it's just very vague about the motives of some of these characters, or also what is essentially going on with these characters. The acting itself is fine, but I don't think the acting is the problem. I think it's the script, really. It has promise, you know. As I say, it looks good. The trailer is pretty decent, but the film itself and the execution was just a little bit all over the place. I just found myself bored. Really, really bored. And I didn't want to be bored. No, that's not a 5. I've pressed the button too early. It's a 3.5. I'm going to give Sunrise a 3.5. I can't really go higher than that. It's not great. 3.5 for Sunrise. And finally, the pièce de résistance, Maxxxine, 2024 American slasher action thriller, written, directed, produced, and edited by Ty West. It's the third installment in West's X film series and a direct sequel to X. The film stars Mia Goth, who reprises her role as Maxine Minx, Alongside Elizabeth Debicki, Moses Sumney, Michelle Monaghan, Bobby Cannavale, Halsey, Lily Collins, Giancarlo Esposito, and Kevin Bacon. In the film, Maxxine sets out for fame and success in the 1980s Hollywood while being targeted by a mysterious killer. So, yeah, we'll start talking about the plot. We won't go too far into it. 1985 Los Angeles. Amidst the Night Stalker murders, Maxxine Minx successfully auditions for the lead in a new horror film, The Puritan 2, despite all of her previous film credits being in adult films. After sharing the news with her friend Leon and colleague Amber James, the latter invites Maxxine to a party in the Hollywood Hills, which she declines. Maxxine goes to work at her second job, a live peep show, where a mysterious leather-clad figure watches with anger. She meets another adult entertainer, Tabby Martin, who also invites her to a party that Amber mentioned, but Maxxine declines again. The figure leaves a police evidence VHS tape containing the porn film Maxxine and her now-deceased friends had attempted to make 6 years prior. Upon watching it, she asks a confused Leon to find out where it came from. Meanwhile, in the Hollywood Hills, Amber and Tabby are killed and have their bodies branded with satanic symbols. I'll leave it there. I mean, the things to highlight with Maxxine straight off the bat. If you've seen X, if you've seen Pearl, they're almost love letters to those eras of cinema. 70s, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, kind of grindhouse, kind of gore. Well, not gore, but grindhouse horror in X. And then that golden age of Technicolor cinema in Pearl. Just it's really faithful to those eras of film. I found title card, the music, the editing, the sheen on screen had a real authenticity to it, and that's the same with Maxxine. This feels like a film from 1985, 1986, something like that. I mean, it's set in 1985, so I'll say 1985. In terms of there's moments with a bit of a VHS feel to it, but not so much of a tacky VHS filter that some people will just sort of put on and go, yeah, look, it's authentic to the 80s. This has a bit more of that natural feel to it. And the title cards, when they appear to say like days later or blah 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 or the next day, whatever it is, the fonts used have an authenticity to it, and then you also have the VHS flicker on the fonts themselves. It's really nice touches there. The music is incredible in this film. Mia Goth, I mean, what more can you say? She once again smashes it out the park. I mean, everyone's on point here. I really like Giancarlo Esposito as her agent. Kevin Bacon is quite campy, quite hammy. Not campy, but quite hammy, and really quite over the top, but in a good way in his role. We got some nice chase sequences in this. A couple of the kills are very Giallo inspired, which I really liked. I do love a good Giallo, so I very much enjoyed that. The finale is decent, but it isn't amazing in terms of the reveals when we get to the end of the film. I kind of saw them coming. It's not necessarily a bad thing, doesn't mean it's predictable, but I kind of saw them coming. And I've seen some people say that it's that authentic to Giallos because the third act of Giallos always suck. And I don't agree with that because, like, I think Suspiria knocks it out of the park, Deep Red knocks it out of the park. I haven't obviously seen that many Giallos outside of Dario Argento's. But I don't necessarily agree with that. I did sort of think, yeah, the reveal in the third act and how things are tied together was fine, but not amazing. That's the only kind of thing that I would say I could say is maybe a negative, but it's not really a negative. I had a great time watching this. The violence isn't constant. You know, similarly to X, it knows how to build up the characters and the moments without having to rely on the violence. But when the violence does happen, you have the moments where you will get kind of squeamish because, like, when you just see something happen, it goes full on into it, and it's brilliant. Yeah, I had a great time with this, and I think I will have to do a discussion point at some point on the trilogy and what is my favorite, and, you know, what I think is the best and what I think is the weakest, if any. But I think I'm going to give this an 8. I was going to put 7.5, but it's one of those things that I find when I talk about the film, after I've had, time to sleep on it to digest it, and then I revisit, in my memory those moments, that's when I kind of decide, actually, did I enjoy this more when I think about it than I maybe initially thought with my score? Or have I initially had a score, and then when I start talking about and thinking about it, it's like, actually, it doesn't quite hit those marks. So, but no, 8 out of 10, I think. Maxxine's a solid entry. Definitely one worth a watch. Well, that is it for another edition of the Ministry of Horror. Thank you very much for watching or listening wherever you are. If you're on YouTube, give the channel a subscribe, give the video a like, put a comment, all those things that do engagement. I don't know how it all works. If you're listening to this on podcast platforms, give the show a follow, like, share it around to your friends, get the word out there on the Ministry of Horror. It's really appreciated. And I've been, as per usual, your host Tezz. Thank you very much for watching, listening, ghouls and fiends. I will catch you later on.